Hey, what's up? Today we are going to do a book review. Today's book, The Perfect Investment by Paul Moore. So let's give it a quick read and see what we have to learn. Alright, so we just finished reading this book, The Perfect Investment, Create Enduring Wealth from the Historic Shift to Multifamily Housing by Paul Moore. I guess the first question we should ask is, who is Paul Moore and why should we trust what he says? Well, Paul has been an entrepreneur and investor for most of his life. He stumbled into real estate quite a while ago and is kind of stuck with it. He's flipped homes, rehabbed numerous properties. He's flipped luxury lakefront lots. He's been involved in self-storage, mobile home parks, huge multifamily deals. He's been involved in everything and has pretty much seen it all. Very experienced guy. If you're familiar with BiggerPockets at all, you may have seen his content on there. He does some blogs and articles for them, as well as some video content like live streams on the weekends. He was on the BiggerPockets podcast show 285. So if you have not listened to that one, it was a really good podcast. You should go check it out. Again, that's number 285. He also has a podcast. It's called How to Lose Money. It's a very interesting podcast where they talk to investors and entrepreneurs and talk about a big failure in their past and how they got out of it, what they learned from it, and how they were able to rebuild because of it. Very interesting. Go check that out. You know, one thing I just want to point out, and this is in the book, it's in the appendix, but Paul has a very interesting and very unique, and I think very important, why he does all this investing. He wants to accumulate a lot of wealth so that he can help as many people escape human trafficking as possible. I think that is very cool. And so he wants to funnel as much money as he can into these charitable organizations that thwart human trafficking. So I think we can trust Paul. Let's dive into just a couple things in the book that I think are just some good points to go over to see if it's worth a read for you. Number one, he really goes into the why of larger apartment buildings. And when I say larger apartment buildings, I'm talking about 80 units and up as far as what the book talks about. And they're mostly talking about B, maybe C class properties. So a big thing with apartment buildings is knowing demographics. If you have, say, 100 or 200 units, you need to be pretty sure that those are going to be filled up as much as possible most of the time. So what's going on demographically in that area? Can the area support a building of that size? Will there always be renters there? So he dives deep into the demographic data, and it really, I mean, one of the statistics that kind of stands out to me is the fact that America as a whole is kind of going on this downward trend in home ownership and on an upward trend toward renting. So that bodes well for these multifamily properties. The second point about that, of why multifamily, is the management of it. Now, a lot of people would think, oh man, if I had a 100-unit property, that would be just crazy to think of all the toilets you'd have to fix and all the leasing you'd have to do. You'd be running around like a chicken with your head cut off. That seems really, really difficult. I would argue, and he argues in the book too, that it's actually easier to manage these larger deals. Let's just say that you have a 100-unit building and you have 10 single-family homes. I think it's easier to manage a 100-unit building than it is to manage 10 single-family homes, and this is why. In 10 single-family homes, you're probably going to get a call every week or two to fix a toilet or a light switch or an outlet, or there's a leak, something going on. It's just going to be a little more labor intensive. Now with a 100-unit building, sure, you're still going to have a lot of stuff like that, but you have a few layers of protection. One is you're going to have a full-time maintenance person. You are also going to have a full-time leasing agent on site or a management person. And then on top of that, you'll have another layer of property management. So you really have a lot less work to do when it comes to these larger multifamily deals because they scale so well. So another thing about this book, and this is kind of what interested me in the first place and why I wanted to read it, was after explaining the demographics and why multifamily, he explains what it looks like to either be a syndicator of a deal or a passive investor and what that looks like on both sides. I'm interested in potentially doing some larger multifamily syndication at some point in the future. So I really wanted to wrap my mind around it and get a better understanding of what that looks like. So if you're ever interested in doing something like that, highly recommend that you read this. Lastly, he really dives deep into choosing a market and how to choose a market when you're looking for these large deals. What size does the market need to be? What are the demographic trends? How do you find out all this information? Because it's super important. If you get that piece of it wrong, you're probably going to have a failed investment. So I highly recommend this book. If you ever want to invest in larger multifamily, whether as a syndicator or a passive investor, or you just want to learn more about the space, you should definitely read this book by Paul Moore. And I will link to it below, and his website, wellingscapital.com. You can get the book either on Amazon or on wellingscapital.com. So check it out. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. See you guys later.